They say you cannot put a price on family loyalty, but my father found one. $12,300. That was the exact cost of his integrity. When he offered to hold my inheritance for safekeeping, I thought he was protecting me from my own grief. It took me weeks to realize he was not guarding a nest egg. He was holding a hostage. He thought he was the gatekeeper, but he did not know I was already building the trap. The highway leading back to Marlow Harbor always felt less like a road and more like a funnel. No matter how wide the lanes were near Cleveland, they narrowed the closer you got to the lake, eventually turning into the two-lane cracked asphalt strip that wound past the rusted silo of the old grain mill and the welcome sign that had been leaning to the left since the late 90s. I drove with the radio off. The silence in my Honda Civic was heavy, but it was preferable to the static that came with the local stations this far out. I was 33 years old, yet passing that leaning sign made me feel 12 again. It was a regression I was not prepared for, but one that grief seemed to demand. Grandma Evelyn was gone. The funeral had been 2 days ago, a blur of casseroles, heavy floral scents, and the suffocating embrace of distant relatives who felt entitled to hug me just because we shared a last name. I had spent 48 hours nodding, smiling weakly, and accepting condolences that felt like transaction receipts. Now, the house was empty of guests. The flowers were beginning to wilt, and the real business of death was about to begin. I parked outside Halloway and Pierce Legal Services. The building was a brick square that sat directly across from the post office, looking exactly as it had when I was a teenager. The air in Marlow Harbor always smelled faintly of damp earth and standing water, a scent that stuck to your clothes and hair. I checked my reflection in the rearview mirror. My eyes were puffy, the dark circles under them looking like bruises in the harsh morning light. I looked like a woman who had recently lost her grandmother, her boyfriend, and her apartment in the span of 6 months, which, of course, was exactly what I was. My father, Martin Brooks, was already waiting by the entrance. He was leaning against the brick wall, looking handsome in that rugged, aging athlete way that charmed every waitress at the Ridgeview Grill. He wore a canvas barn coat over a button-down shirt, his silver hair swept back neatly. When he saw me, he pushed off the wall and opened his arms. "Audrey," he said, his voice warm and grounding. "You made it." I walked into his hug, letting the familiar scent of wood shavings and peppermint soap wash over me. For a moment, I let myself be the daughter. I let myself be small. "I am okay." "Dad," I said into his shoulder. He squeezed me tight, then pulled back, holding me at arm's length to inspect me. "You look tired," he said. He did not say it unkindly. He said it with the sort of factual authority he applied to everything, from the weather to the engine noise in my car. "I am fine," I lied, just ready to get this over with. We walked inside together. The office of Halloway and Pierce was a time capsule of beige carpet and wood paneling. Dust motes danced in the shafts of light cutting through the blinds. Mr. Halloway was a man who seemed to be constructed entirely of elbows and eyebrows. He sat behind a desk that was too large for the room, shuffling through a file folder that looked perilously thin. My mother, Diane, was not there. She had claimed a migraine, but I knew the truth. She hated talking about money, and she hated legal settings even more. She preferred to let Martin handle the messy parts of life while she reorganized the pantry. Mr. Halloway cleared his throat. It was a dry, papery sound. "Audrey, Martin, thank you for coming," he said. "As you know, Evelyn preferred simplicity. The estate is largely settled. The house goes to Martin, as discussed. The majority of the assets have been distributed according to the trust established 10 years ago." I nodded. I knew this. I did not expect anything. I was here because Mr. Halloway had called and said there was a specific addendum regarding me. "However," Mr. Halloway continued, adjusting his glasses, "Evelyn left a specific cash instruction, a separate bequest for you. Audrey." He slid a piece of paper across the desk. I looked at it. It was a copy of a cashier's check request form, dated 3 weeks before she died. $12,300. Mr. Holloway read aloud. I stared at the number. It was specific. It was not 10,000. It was not 15. It was 12,300. She left a note. Mr. Holloway added. He picked up a small, handwritten card and squinted at it. For Audrey's restart. The words hit me in the chest with the force of a physical blow. For Audrey's restart. I felt tears prick the corners of my eyes. Hot and sudden. Grandma Evelyn knew. She knew about the breakup with Mark. She knew I had moved into a studio apartment that smelled like boiled cabbage because it was all I could afford after Mark kept the lease. She knew I was drowning. Even if I never told her the depth of the water, $12,300, it was not a fortune. But to me, right now, it was oxygen. It was first and last month's rent on a place with sunlight. It was a buffer against the terrifying rumors circling at my job. It was a chance to breathe. That is very generous, my father said. His voice was steady, appreciative. Typical mom, always looking out. Mister? Holloway nodded. I have the check prepared here. It is made out to Audrey Brooks. He held up the envelope. I reached for it, my hand trembling slightly. Dad cleared his throat. That is a lot of money to be carrying around in a purse. Audrey, he said. I froze, my hand halfway to the desk. I am just going to put it in the bank. Dad, I said. Martin frowned, a look of deep concern etching lines into his forehead. He turned to Mr. Holloway. She is in the middle of a move, Martin told the lawyer, speaking about me as if I were not sitting 3 feet away. New apartment, a lot of upheaval. You know how chaotic that gets. Papers get lost. Things get misplaced in boxes. He turned his blue eyes on me. Honey, you do not want this floating around, he said. You have enough to worry about right now without stressing over a check this size. Why don't we handle this smart? I bristled. I was 33, not 13. I can handle a check. Dad, I said, trying to keep my voice even. Martin smiled, a sad, knowing smile that made me feel like I was throwing a tantrum. I know you can, he said, just like you could handle that savings jar. Remember, the reference stopped me cold. The savings jar. I was 8 years old. I had saved quarters and crumpled dollar bills in a large pickle jar for a year, intending to buy a bicycle. One afternoon, I decided to take the money out to count it on the back porch. I got distracted by a stray cat, left the jar on the railing, and it got knocked over. The glass shattered, the coins scattered into the tall grass and the dirt below the deck. I spent hours crying, trying to find the quarters in the mud. I never found them all. Dad had been the one to come out, shake his head, and help me sift through the dirt. You have to be careful. Audrey, he had said then, money has a way of walking off if you do not watch it. He was looking at me now with that same expression, benevolent, protective, superior. I am just saying, Martin continued, his voice dropping to a confidential whisper. You are emotional right now. You are grieving. You are stressed. Why add the risk? Why don't I hold the funds for safekeeping just for a few weeks until you get settled? Until you are sure you are not going to misplace it or do something impulsive. Mr. Holloway watched us, his face blank. He was paid to execute wills, not mediate family dynamics. I do not think that is necessary, I said, but my voice lacked conviction. The memory of the jar, the shame of it, the feeling of being irresponsible and small was a heavy weight, and he was right about one thing. I was exhausted. My brain felt like it was packed with cotton. The idea of managing this money, of making sure I used it perfectly because it was Grandma's last gift, suddenly felt overwhelming. Martin saw the hesitation. He was a shark who sensed a drop of blood in the water, but he moved like a dolphin. Tell you what, he said, let us just get it to the bank. I will help you with the deposit. There are fraud risks these days. You know, checks this size, out-of-state banks. It can be a nightmare if you do not do it right. I know the manager at Marlowe Community. We will make sure it clears instantly. He stood up, signaling the discussion was over. Mr. Holloway, If you would hand that over, we will get out of your hair, Martin said. I sat there for a second too long. I should have said no. I should have taken the envelope and driven back to Cleveland. But the fatigue was a physical weight on my shoulders, and Dad looked so capable, so sure of himself. Okay, I whispered. Mister? Holloway handed the envelope to me. I took it. It felt light. We walked out into the cool autumn air. See, Martin said, wrapping an arm around my shoulders. Easy. We will get this tucked away. And you can focus on getting your head straight. I am doing this for you. Honey, you do not need the extra chaos. We took his truck to the bank. It was a short drive, but Martin filled it with talk about the weather and the upcoming winter. He did not mention the money again until we were walking through the glass double doors of Marlowe Community Bank. The bank was quiet. A few elderly locals were filling out slips at the island in the center, scratching pens against paper. The air smelled of stale coffee and carpet cleaner. Martin walked straight to the second window. The teller was a woman I vaguely recognized, someone who had been a few grades ahead of me in school. Her name tag said, Brenda, Martin Brooks. How are you? Brenda asked, smiling bright. Getting by. Brenda, getting by, Martin said, leaning his elbows on the high counter. Tough week. Mom passed. Oh, Martin, I am so sorry, she said, her face dropping into practiced sympathy. Yeah, well, she had a good run. Martin said, Listen, I have got my daughter Audrey here. Mom left her a little something, and we need to get it deposited safely. He looked at me and held out his hand. Give it here. Honey, he said. I opened my purse and took out the check. I handed it to him. It felt like handing over a limb. Martin slid the check across the counter along with his own driver's license. We want to put this into a holding account, he said. Just a temporary hold. Safekeeping. She is in transition right now, moving cities. And we want to keep it secure until she is settled. Standard hold account. Brenda picked up the check. She looked at the amount. She looked at the payee line Audrey Brooks. She looked up at Martin, then shifted her gaze to me. Audrey, do you have an account with us? She asked. I used to. I said, but I think it was closed years ago when I moved to Cleveland. Right, Martin interrupted. That is why we are using the hold account. We do not want to open a whole new checking line just to close it in a month. Just park it under my profile for now. Marked for her. That is the simplest way. Right? Brenda hesitated. She looked at the check again. Well, normally for a third-party check like this, the payee needs to endorse it, and if it is going into an account not in their name... She trailed off. She looked at Martin. Martin was smiling, that easy, confident smile that said, I am a good man, I am a grieving son, and I am a father helping his daughter. It is family. Brenda, Martin said, his voice lowering. She is having a rough time. I am just trying to make sure she does not lose it. You know how it is. Brenda looked at me. There was a pause, a distinct, heavy pause. Her eyes flickered to the computer screen, then back to my face. She looked like she wanted to ask me something, or tell me something. I stood there, clutching my purse strap. I felt the pressure of Martin standing next to me. A solid wall of expectation. If I questioned him now, in front of Brenda, I would be the ungrateful daughter. I would be the dramatic one. I would be making a scene. It is fine, I said, my voice sounding thin in the quiet lobby. Dad is holding it for me. Brenda pursed her lips. Okay, she said. She did not sound convinced, but she sounded resigned. If you will just endorse the back. Audrey. Martin handed me a pen. I flipped the check over. Audrey Brooks. I signed my name in blue ink. I handed it back to Brenda. She typed something into her keyboard. The keys clacked loudly. Okay, Martin, she said. I will deposit this into the savings ending in 402. Perfect, Martin said. He did not ask for a receipt. He just tapped the counter. Thanks, Brenda. You are a lifesaver. We walked out. The sun was brighter now, glaring off the windshields in the parking lot. Done and done, Martin said, rubbing his hands together. Now, let us go get some lunch. I am starving. That night, I stayed at my parents' house. It was a sprawling ranch-style home that felt too big now that Grandma Evelyn wasn't occupying the in-law suite. I lay in my old twin bed, staring at the glow-in-the-dark stars I had stuck to the ceiling 20 years ago. My phone buzzed. It was Leah. Leah Benton had been my best friend since kindergarten. While I had fled to the city, Leah had stayed in Marlow Harbor, married a mechanic, and now ran the most successful bakery in the county. She was the only person who knew the full extent of the mess my life was in. "Hey." Her text read, "How are you holding up?" I typed back, "Surviving. Funeral hangover. Dad took control of the inheritance check." 3 dots appeared instantly, then stopped, then appeared again. "What do you mean, took control? He deposited it for me. Said he would hold it for safekeeping so I do not spend it or lose it. You know how he is." My phone rang immediately. I picked up. "Hey, Audrey," Leah said. Her voice was sharp. There was no preamble. "Did you see the receipt?" I rubbed my eyes. "No." He handled it. "We went to the bank together." "Which bank? Marlow Community. And whose account did it go into?" Leah asked. I paused. I tried to replay the scene at the counter. Brenda typing. The number 402. He said it was a temporary hold account. I said, "Under his profile," but marked for me. "Audrey," Leah said. And the way she said my name made my stomach turn over. There is no such thing as a temporary hold account. That is not a banking product. I sat up in bed. The sheets felt cold against my legs. "What do you mean, I mean? Banks do not have special accounts just for fathers to hold money for their adult daughters." Leah said, "It is either a joint account or it is his account. Did you sign a signature card? Did you put your name on a new account?" "No." I said, "I just endorsed the check. Then you just deposited $12,300 into Martin Brooks's personal bank account." Leah said. I felt a flush of heat rise up my neck. "Leah, come on," I said, defending him out of reflex. "It is my dad. He is just being dad. He thinks I am unstable because of the breakup. He is trying to protect me." "Protect you from what?" "Having access to your own money," Leah asked. "Audrey, listen to me. I see your dad around town. He is a great guy. Everyone loves him, but you know how he gets with control. He is keeping it safe." I insisted, though my voice was shaking. "He said I can have it whenever I need it." "Okay," Leah said, her voice softening. "Okay, I hope so. But listen to me. Ask him for the account number tomorrow. Just say you need it for your records. See what he says." "I will." I said, "It is fine." "Leah, really." We hung up, but I did not sleep. I stared at the plastic stars, waiting for them to glow, but they had lost their charge years ago. They were just dull gray shapes against the darkness. The next morning, the house was quiet. Mom was already gone to her bridge club, and Dad was out in the garage. I could hear the rhythmic rasp of him sanding something. I made a cup of coffee and walked out to the garage. The smell of sawdust was thick. Martin was working on an old chair, his back to me. "Morning, Dad," I said. He turned, smiling. There was that warmth again. The warmth that made you feel guilty for ever doubting him. "Morning, sleepyhead, coffee fresh." "Yeah," I said. I leaned against the workbench. "Hey, Dad, about the money." I started, trying to sound casual. He didn't stop sanding. "What about it? I was just thinking. For my records. I should probably have the details. You know, just so I know where it is parked. Can you give me the account info?" Martin stopped sanding. He blew the dust off the wood. He turned to me, wiping his hands on a rag. "Audrey, relax," he said. He laughed. A short, sharp sound. "You have not even had your coffee yet, and you are worrying about spreadsheets. I just want to know." I said, "It is parked. Honey, it is safe. It is in a high-interest hold. It is earning more there than it would in your checking account. Believe me." He tossed the rag onto the bench and leaned in, his expression changing from dismissive to conspiratorial. "Speaking of checking accounts," he said, "are you still seeing that guy Mark?" The pivot was so fast I almost got whiplash. "No." "Dad," I said, "I told you. We broke up 2 months ago." Martin shook his head. looking disappointed. "I liked him," Martin said. "He had a good handshake. You sure you did not just push him away? You know how you get when you are stressed. You push people away." I felt the familiar prickle of shame. The conversation was shifting. The ground was moving under my feet. Suddenly, we weren't talking about my $12,000. We were talking about my inability to keep a relationship. We were talking about my flaws. "Dad, this isn't about Mark," I said. "Isn't it?" he asked gently. "You are obsessing over this money because you feel out of control. I get it. That is why I'm helping you. Let me carry the load for a bit. Okay, just focus on getting yourself back together." He walked over and kissed me on the forehead. "Trust me," he said. I drove back to Cleveland an hour later. I didn't get the account number. I didn't get a receipt. I left with a cooler full of leftovers and a vague promise that the money was parked. The drive was 3 hours of white-knuckle anxiety. Leah's words kept echoing in my head. There is no such thing as a temporary hold account. When I unlocked the door to my apartment, the air was stale. It was a studio, basically one large room with a kitchenette shoved into the corner. My boxes were still stacked against the wall. I hadn't unpacked because I wasn't sure I could afford to stay. I sat down on the floor and opened my laptop. I needed to check my work email. I had taken 3 days of bereavement leave, and in the corporate world, 3 days was an eternity. There was an email from HR. The subject line was Departmental Restructuring and Role Impact. My heart hammered against my ribs. I opened it. "Dear team, due to recent market shifts, we will be consolidating the marketing and outreach divisions effective immediately." I scanned the text, my eyes blurring. Phrases like redundancy, position elimination, and severance packages jumped out at me. It wasn't a firing, not yet, but it was the warning shot. My job, the one stable thing I had left, was shaking. I closed the laptop. I looked around the apartment. The rent was due in 10 days. My checking account had $400 in it. I needed that $12,300. I didn't need it for a restart. I didn't need it for a rainy day. I needed it to survive the storm that was already here. I pulled out my phone and looked at the last text from my father. It was a picture of the sanding block he had been using. "Smooth finish takes patience," he had captioned it. I stared at the screen until the backlight timed out and left me in the dark. He had the money. He had the control. And I had a terrible, sinking realization that getting it back was not going to be as simple as asking nicely. I was 33 years old, and I had just handed my life over to a man who once convinced me that losing my own savings was my fault, not an accident. I stood up. I walked to the window and looked out at the gray Cleveland skyline. "Okay, Dad," I whispered to the empty room. "You want to hold it for safekeeping fine? Let's see how safe it really is. But first, I needed proof. I needed to know exactly where that money had gone, and why the teller had looked at me with such pity." I opened my laptop again. I didn't reply to HR. Instead, I opened a new spreadsheet. I titled it The Restart, Row 1, Column A Inheritance, Row 1, Column B, $1,230, Row 1, Column C, Status Missing. I was done crying. I was done being the little girl who lost her jar. If Martin Brooks wanted to play banker, I was going to make sure he understood the terms of the loan. But as I sat there, the fear was still colder than the anger, because deep down, I knew my father. And I knew that money wasn't just parked, it was being used, and the only question was what he was buying with my future. The screen of my laptop was the only light in the apartment. I had created the spreadsheet, but the cells were empty. Column B. Row 2 stared back at me, a blank white rectangle waiting for a number that would make my life feel manageable again. I picked up my phone. It was 7 o'clock on a Tuesday evening. I typed out the message I had rehearsed in my head for 3 hours. I wanted it to sound breezy. I wanted it to sound like the dutiful daughter who was finally getting her life together, exactly as he wanted. "Hey, Dad. Finally sitting down to tackle this budget. Can you send me the account number and routing info where the funds are parked? Just want to add it to my tracking sheet so I can see the full picture. Thanks, I hit send. The response time was usually immediate with Martin Brooks. He was a man who lived with his phone in his shirt pocket, always ready to answer a client or a buddy, but tonight, the bubbles did not appear. 5 minutes passed, then 20. I got up and paced the length of my studio apartment, which took exactly 8 steps. I washed a mug. I refolded the blanket on the sofa. 40 minutes later, my phone buzzed. Hey, honey. Glad you're getting organized. Proud of you. Here's a snap of the balance. It is safe and sound. Attached was an image. I tapped it to open the full view, and my stomach dropped. It was a screenshot, but it had been cropped so aggressively that it was practically abstract art. There was a bold number in the center, $12,300.00. Above it, the word, available balance. That was it. There was no bank logo at the top. There was no account number. Not even the last 4 digits. There was no date. For all I knew, this was a screenshot from Google Images, or a balance from an account that held other money, or a Photoshop job done by someone who did not understand pixel resolution. It was generic. It was anonymous. It was useless. I stared at it, feeling the heat rise in my cheeks. He had given me exactly what I asked for proof of the number while giving me absolutely nothing I could use to verify it. I typed back, my fingers hitting the glass a little too hard. Thanks, Dad. But I actually need the specific account number and the bank name for the spreadsheet software I'm using. It links everything automatically. Can you shoot that over, this time? The reply was instant. Don't worry about the tech stuff. Audie, it is a hold account. Remember? Does not link to outside apps for security reasons. Too much hacking these days. Just manually enter the total. It is there. I read the text 3 times. Does not link for security reasons. It sounded plausible if you did not know anything about banking. It sounded protective, but to me, staring at my empty fridge and the email from HR that was still sitting in my inbox, it sounded like a door slamming shut. I called Leah. She picked up on the first ring, the background noise of her bakery mixer whirring in the distance. He sent me a cropped screenshot. I said, "Of course he did." Leah said, she sounded tired, but not surprised. Did it have a bank logo? No. Did it have a date? No. Audrey, Leah said, her voice cutting through the mechanical whir. You know what this is? I know, I said, sinking onto the floor with my back against the wall. But maybe he is just being... Dad, maybe he really thinks he is protecting it from hackers. He is 62. He thinks the cloud is an actual weather phenomenon. Leah sighed, a long exhale that sounded like static. Do you remember your 16th birthday, she asked. I frowned at the non sequitur. What, your 16th birthday? Leah repeated. Your Aunt Carol sent you $500, a check and a card. She wanted you to start a car fund. I remembered. I remembered the thrill of holding that check. It was the most money I had ever seen with my name on it. Yeah, I said. Dad took it to the bank for me. And did you ever see that $500 again? Leah asked. I hesitated. Well, not as cash, but he bought me those tires for the used Cavalier I bought later. And he got me the good stereo system for Christmas. Leah's voice was gentle, but relentless. He bought you tires 6 months later. Audrey, and the stereo was a Christmas gift. He took your money, used it for whatever he needed in that moment, and then repaid you in items that he got to choose. On his timeline, and he took credit for them as gifts. He rewrote the math. He made you feel grateful for getting your own money back in the form of rubber and speakers. I sat in silence. The memory shifted under the light of her words. I had thanked him so profusely for those tires. I had hugged him. I had told everyone what a great dad I had. He is doing it again, Leah said. He is borrowing it without asking, and he is going to pay you back in... I do not know. A used car, a down payment on a condo he chooses. He is absorbing the asset, Audrey, and the longer you let him hold it, the more he feels like it is his. I hung up feeling sick. The pattern was there, woven into the fabric of my childhood so tightly I had never seen the threads. Control disguised as generosity, theft disguised as safekeeping. I could not sleep. The next morning, I called Holloway and Pierce Legal Services. I did not ask for Mr. Holloway. I asked for the paralegal. A woman named Sarah, who I remembered had kind eyes. "Hi, this is Audrey Brooks," I said, trying to keep my voice professional. "I am just finalizing some records for my own tax purposes regarding my grandmother's estate. I wanted to check the status of the distribution check." "One moment, Ms. Brooks," Sarah said. I heard typing, the click of a mouse. "Yes, here it is," Sarah said. "Check number 1098. Issued to Audrey Brooks for $12,300. It has cleared. Do you have the date it was cashed?" I asked. "October 14th, she said. My heart gave a little jump. That was the day of the funeral. The day we went to the bank. "Okay," I said. "And does it show the endorsing bank it looks like?" "Yes. Marlowe Community Bank. Negotiated at the counter." "Thank you, Sarah." I hung up. The money had left the estate. It had gone to Marlowe Community Bank. That much was true. Martin had not simply torn up the check or lost it. He had deposited it, but into what I looked at my schedule. I had a dentist appointment in Cleveland at 2 o'clock. I canceled it. I grabbed my keys. I drove back to Marlowe Harbor. The drive felt different this time. It was not a funeral procession. It was a reconnaissance mission. I wore sunglasses even though it was overcast. I parked my car 2 blocks away from the bank, in front of the drugstore, just in case Martin's truck was prowling Main Street. I walked to the bank. My coat collar turned up. I felt like a spy in my own hometown. When I entered the lobby, it was busier than before. It was Friday, payday for the local factories. People were lined up with checks in hand. I scanned the counter. Brenda, the teller who had helped us, was not there. Instead, at the far end, sat Mrs. Gable. Mrs. Gable had been working at Marlowe Community Bank since before I was born. She was an institution. She had hair like spun sugar and eyes that missed nothing. She had given me lollipops when I was 5 and scolded me for overdrawing my account when I was 22. I waited in her line. When I reached the front, I lowered my sunglasses. "Hello, Mrs. Gable," I said. "Audrey Brooks," she said, her voice cracking with age but sharp with recognition. "I heard about Evelyn, a terrible loss. She was a woman of substance." "Thank you," I said. "What can I do for you?" "Dear, are you moving back?" "Not yet." I said, "I actually had a question about a transaction." I leaned in closer to the plexiglass. "My father and I came in earlier this week. We deposited a check. $12,300. It was an inheritance distribution." Mrs. Gable nodded slowly. "I saw the transaction come through the logs. A significant sum." "Yes," I said. "The thing is, Dad has the paperwork, and I need to verify the account number it was deposited into, for my records. He is, well, you know Dad. He is slow with sending copies." I gave her a conspiratorial smile. The men are useless at paperwork smile. Mrs. Gable typed something. She peered at the screen through her bifocals. "I see the deposit," she said. "October 14th. "Great," I said, sliding a piece of scrap paper across the counter. "If you could just write down the last 4 digits of the account it went into, that would be wonderful." Mrs. Gable looked at the screen. Then she stopped. Her fingers hovered over the keyboard. She looked at me, and her expression shifted from grandmotherly to professional. "Audrey," she said softly. "Yes. Is your name on this account?" I paused. This was the moment, the pivot point. "I am not sure." I lied. "He said he set up a holding account for me. I assumed my name was attached." Mrs. Gable looked at the screen again. She pressed her lips together. "I cannot give you that number." "Audrey, why not?" I asked, my voice rising slightly. "It was my check. I endorsed it, because you are not a signer on the account." Mrs. Gable said. Her voice was kind, but it was final. The funds were deposited into an account solely in the name of Martin Brooks. I felt the floor tilt. "Solely?" I asked. "There is no sub-account, No in trust for, Mrs. Gable shook her head. It is a standard personal checking account. Dear. Martin's primary. Primary? He hadn't even opened a separate account. He hadn't put it in a savings jar. He had dumped my $12,300 into his everyday checking account, the same account he used to buy lumber, pay the electric bill, and buy beer at the grocery store. My inheritance was currently mixing with his gas money. I cannot discuss someone else's account details with you, Mrs. Gable said, lowering her voice to a whisper. You understand. Privacy laws are very strict. I understand. I said. I felt cold. Thank you, Mrs. Gable. I walked out of the bank. The wind had picked up, whipping dead leaves across the sidewalk. It wasn't a hold. It wasn't a safety measure. It was an absorption. He had swallowed the money whole. I sat in my car for 20 minutes, just breathing. I wanted to drive to his house and scream at him. I wanted to demand a cashier's check right now, but I heard Leah's voice in my head. He will rewrite it. If I confronted him now, he would say I was hysterical. He would say he moved it there for easier access. He would say I was ungrateful. He would gaslight me until I apologized for asking. No, I needed him to trap himself. I took out my phone. I opened the Notes app. I created a new folder documentation. Date October 18th. Event visit to Marlowe Community Bank. Witness Mrs. Gable Senior Teller. Fact funds deposited into Martin Brooks' personal primary checking. No separate hold account exists. No joint access. Then, I opened my text thread with Martin. I needed to be smart. I needed to be the calm, rational one. I needed to force him to lie on the record. I typed, Hey Dad, thanks for the screenshot. I understand about the security stuff. Just so I can plan my move-in costs for November 1st, can you confirm the funds are liquid? I will need to withdraw about $3,000 on the 1st for the deposit and movers. I sent it. I was giving him a timeline. 2 weeks. He replied an hour later. November 1st might be tight. Honey, the bank has a 30-day hold on third-party checks of that size, just to clear everything, but do not worry. I can float you a loan if you need it. I stared at the screen. A 30-day hold on a cashier's check. It was a lie so bold it was almost impressive. Cashier's checks cleared next day. Everyone knew that. I took a screenshot of his text. I saved it to the folder. Thanks for letting me know. I typed back, I will adjust my plans. Just to be clear, the full $12,300 is still there, right? Just locked up, safe as houses. He replied. Screenshot, save. He was digging the hole. I just had to hand him the shovel. 2 days later, Martin texted me. Dinner tonight. Ridgeview Grill. My treat. You have to eat. And I miss my girl. I didn't want to go. The idea of sitting across from him, watching him chew his steak while I knew he was lying to my face, made me nauseous. But avoiding him would look suspicious. I needed to play the role. I drove down. The Ridgeview Grill was the nice restaurant in town. It had tablecloths and a wine list, but it also had televisions in the corners playing sports. It was where you went to be seen. Martin was already at a booth, a drink in front of him. He stood up when I arrived, kissing my cheek. There she is, he boomed, the city slicker. People turned to look. He waved at a man 2 tables over. Sit, sit, he said. I ordered you the calamari. You love the calamari. I sat. I did love the calamari. Or I had when I was 10. Now it just tasted like grease. Thanks, Dad, I said. He looked good, healthy, flush with confidence. So, how is the job hunt? Or the job saving? Whatever we are calling it, he asked, taking a sip of his bourbon. It is uncertain, I said. That is why the money is so important. Dad, if I lose this job, I need that cushion. Martin waved a hand dismissively. You will be fine. You are smart. You always land on your feet. Besides, you have got family. He leaned in. Look, Audrey, I sense some tension with you. About the money. I looked at him. I kept my face neutral. I just want to be responsible. Dad, Grandma left it for a restart. I want to make sure it is ready. Martin sighed. He looked wounded. His shoulders slumped. It hurts me. Audrey, it really does. That you think I would do anything to jeopardize your well-being. I am your father. I changed your diapers. I taught you to drive. And now you are acting like I am some sort of crook because I am trying to keep you from blowing your inheritance on what fancy apartment furniture? A trip to Europe. He was raising his voice just enough, not enough to be a scene, but enough that the couple at the next table glanced over. He was performing the role of the concerned, underappreciated patriarch. I never said that. Dad, I said quietly, you do not have to say it. I can feel it. You are texting me about account numbers, asking about holds. It is insulting. Audrey, do you trust me? The question hung in the air. Do you trust me? If I said no, the dinner was over, and the fight began. If I said yes, I was complicit in the lie. I trust you want what is best for me. I said carefully. He seemed to accept that. He smiled, the tension vanishing as quickly as it had arrived. Exactly. And what is best for you is to let me worry about the finances for a bit. You just worry about being happy. We finished the meal. He paid with a credit card. I wondered if he would pay the bill for that card with my money. As we walked out to the parking lot, I saw it. Martin had driven a Ford F-150 for the last 6 years. It was blue, dented, and smelled like wet dog. But the truck parked next to my Civic was not blue. It was a shimmering, metallic charcoal. It was a Silverado, and it was new, not brand new, maybe a year or two old, but it was a significant upgrade. I stopped. New truck, I asked. Martin didn't miss a beat. He walked around to the driver's side. Oh, this no. My Ford is in the shop. Transmission finally gave up the ghost. This is just a loaner from the dealership. Buddy of mine works there. Hooked me up while they work on mine. I looked at the back of the truck. The license plate frame said Miller Auto Sales. There was a temporary paper tag in the window. A loaner. I repeated, yeah. Nice ride, though. Heated seats. He unlocked it. The lights flashed. Drive safe. Audi. Watch for deer. He climbed in and drove away. I stood in the parking lot, the red taillights burning into my retinas. Dealers didn't give out Silverados as loaners for transmission repairs on 10-year-old Fords. And loaners didn't usually have temporary purchase tags. I took a picture of the empty parking spot where the truck had been, just to mark the time. Then I drove home. The next day, my mother called. Diane Brooks was a woman who lived her life in the conditional tense. She would have done this. She could have been that. She spent her energy managing Martin's moods and smoothing over the rough edges of our family reality. Hi, honey, she said. Her voice was tight. Dad told me you had dinner. He said it was nice. It was fine. Mom, I said, he said you seemed anxious. About the money. I closed my eyes. He had already briefed her. He had spun the narrative. I am not anxious. Mom, I just want to manage my own inheritance. Is that crazy? No, of course not, she said quickly. But you know how he is. He likes to feel useful. He likes to be the provider. When he feels like his position is questioned, he gets prickly. He is lying to me. Mom, I said. There was silence on the line. Audrey, do not use that word, she whispered. He bought a new truck. Mom, I saw it. It is a loaner, she said immediately. He told me. Do you believe that, Audrey? Please, just keep the peace. For me, he has been so stressed lately. The business hasn't been, well, the payments on the shop are high, and he has been worried about making the quarterly. She stopped. I heard a sharp intake of breath. What payments? I asked. Nothing. Just business stuff. Overhead. Look, just let him hold the money for a few months. Once the winter is over, he will settle up. Just do not back him into a corner. When he feels cornered, he digs in. She hung up before I could ask anything else. Stressed about payments. Martin ran a small custom carpentry business. He built cabinets, decks, specialized furniture. It was always feast or famine, but Mom's slip suggested it was famine, and it had been for a while. I needed professional help, not a therapist, a weapon. I searched for legal aid in Cleveland. I couldn't afford a high-priced litigator, but I found a clinic that specialized in elder law and estate disputes. I met Tessa Rourke 3 days later. Tessa was nothing like Mr. Holloway. She was young, maybe my age, with hair pulled back in a severe bun and a desk that was completely clear of clutter. She listened to me for 20 minutes without interrupting. She didn't offer me tea. She didn't pat my hand. She took notes on a yellow legal pad. "So, let me summarize," Tessa said, capping her pen. "You voluntarily endorsed a cashier's check. You verbally agreed to let him deposit it into an account under his control. There is no written contract. There are only text messages where he acknowledges the amount and uses the term safekeeping." "Yes," I said. I felt stupid saying it out loud. "And you suspect the funds have been commingled with his personal assets and potentially spent on a vehicle?" "Yes." Tessa leaned back. "Okay, here is the hard truth. Audrey, this is not a theft case. Not yet. Police will not touch it because you endorsed the check. They will call it a civil dispute. If you sue him now, it is your word against his. He will claim it was a gift, or a loan, or that he is managing it as an informal trustee, and because he is your father, a judge might give him the benefit of the doubt, especially if he claims he is protecting you from instability." I felt a lump form in my throat. "So I can do nothing, I didn't say that," Tessa said. She opened a drawer and pulled out a fresh file folder. "We need to shift the ground," she said. "Right now. This is a family drama. We need to make it a contract dispute. We need to move this from, he said, she said, to, he signed." She looked at me, her eyes cool and intelligent. "You said he likes to look like the good guy." "The protector, yes. Then we use that. We do not demand the money back yet. That makes him defensive. Instead, we ask him to memorialize his benevolence. We create a document that looks like it protects him, but actually defines the debt. We get him to admit, in ink, that the money is yours and he is holding it in trust." She slid a piece of paper toward me. "It is about ownership, intent, and evidence. Audrey, paperwork is not just for taxes. It is the only thing that holds up when the crying starts. Can you get him to sign something if you frame it right?" I thought about Martin. I thought about his need to be the hero. I thought about how he had signed that check deposit slip with a flourish. "If I tell him it is to help me with my landlord," I asked. "If I tell him I need to show proof of assets to keep my apartment, but I do not actually need the cash yet?" Tessa nodded, a microscopic smile appearing. "Exactly. Give him an easy out. Let him think he is doing you a favor by signing a piece of paper. Once we have that signature acknowledging the debt and the terms, we have him. Then, if he spends a dime, it is conversion, it is fraud, and we can nail him." I looked at the yellow pad. The trap. She had written at the top. "Let's write it," I said. Tessa picked up her pen. "We are going to draft a safekeeping agreement," she said. "It will sound friendly, but it will be ironclad." As she began to write, I felt the shift inside me. The daughter who cried over a broken pickle jar was gone. In her place was a woman who was done being gaslit. My father had taken my $12,300, but I was about to take his reputation. Tessa Rourke did not have a view of the lake from her office window. She had a view of a brick wall and a dumpster that belonged to the Italian restaurant next door. But inside that small room, the air was clear. For the first time in weeks, I felt like I was breathing oxygen instead of water. We sat across from each other, the draft of the document lying between us like a loaded weapon. "It is a psychological play as much as a legal one," Tessa said, tapping her pen against the desk. She looked at me with an intensity that made me sit up straighter. "Martin Brooks does not fear the law because he does not think it applies to family. He thinks family is a private kingdom where he is the king. If you come at him with a lawsuit right now, he will see it as an act of war. He will burn the money just to spite you." I nodded. I knew she was right. If I sued him today, he would spend every dime of that $12,300 on a defense attorney, or he would hide it in cash under a floorboard and claim he lost it gambling. He would destroy us both before he admitted he was wrong. So we do not declare war, I said, picking up the thread. We sue for peace. Exactly, Tessa said. We give him a chance to be the hero. We give him a piece of paper that says, I acknowledge you are a good father who is just looking out for me. He will sign that. He will sign it because it validates his narrative. She slid the paper toward me. Read it again, she said. I looked down at the document. It was titled, Personal Asset Safekeeping Agreement. It looked incredibly boring. It looked like a form you would download from a generic legal website to sell a used lawnmower. I, Martin Brooks, acknowledge receipt of funds in the amount of $12,300 from the estate of Evelyn Brooks. I further acknowledge that these funds are the sole property of Audrey Brooks and have been deposited into an account under my control solely for the purpose of temporary safekeeping at her request. I agree to release these funds in full to Audrey Brooks upon her written request, no later than November 15th. It is simple, I said. That is the point, Tessa said. If it looks like a lawyer wrote it, he will spook. It needs to look like you wrote it. It needs to look like bureaucratic hoop jumping. What is the excuse we are using, my landlord? I said. I told him I needed to show proof of funds to renew my lease or secure the new place. Perfect, Tessa said. It is an external enemy. You are not asking for the money because you do not trust him. You are asking for the paper because the mean landlord demands it. Martin can sign this and feel like he is helping you fight the system. I looked at the signature line at the bottom. It was just a black line waiting for ink. What happens if he refuses? I asked. Then we know he has already spent it, Tessa said quietly. If he will not sign a paper saying he has the money, it is because he does not have the money. And if that is the case, Audrey, we stop playing nice. We file a police report for theft by deception. The words hung in the air. Theft by deception. It sounded so criminal. It sounded like something that happened to other people, not to families who ate pot roast together on Sundays. He will sign it, I said, trying to convince myself. He has to. I left Tessa's office with the document tucked into a plain manila folder. I felt a strange vibration in my hands, a mixture of adrenaline and nausea. I was setting a trap for my own father. I was hunting him. I sat in my car and took deep breaths until the shaking stopped. Then, I pulled out my phone. I needed to send the text. It had to be perfect. It had to be weak. Hey, Dad. I have been thinking about what you said at dinner. You are right. I have been so stressed about the job stuff that I'm not thinking clearly. I really appreciate you watching out for me. I am sorry if I seemed ungrateful. I waited. The 3 dots appeared almost instantly. Water under the bridge. Honey, we are family. We stick together. I let out a breath I didn't know I was holding. He had taken the bait. Now for the hook. I do have a small favor, though. My landlord is being a total pain about my lease renewal. He wants updated proof of funds because of the job rumors. Since the money is in your account, he won't accept a screenshot. I typed up a simple memo just saying, you are holding it for me, just so I can get him off my back. Can I bring it by for a quick signature? I watched the screen. This was the moment. If he smelled a rat, he would call me. He would yell. He would ask why I couldn't just tell the landlord to call him. But Martin Brooks loved to solve problems. He loved to be the guy who fixed things. Sure thing. Audie. Stupid landlords. Always want blood. I will handle it. Meet me at St. Eliza's in an hour. I am meeting some of the guys there anyway. St. Eliza's coffee house. Of course, it was his throne room. It was a converted church on the corner of Main and 4th, with high ceilings and stained glass windows that made the dust motes look holy. Martin went there every afternoon to drink dark roast and hold court with the other semi-retired contractors and business owners of Marlow Harbor. He wanted an audience. He wanted me to come to him, to bend the knee in public. Perfect. I typed, see you there. I drove to Marlow Harbor in silence. I didn't listen to music. I rehearsed my lines. It is just a formality. It is just for the file. You know how sticklers are. When I walked into St. Eliza's, the smell hit me first, roasted beans and old wood. The place was buzzing. It was 3 o'clock on a Wednesday, the golden hour for the town's idle patriarchs. I spotted Martin immediately. He was at a large round table near the old altar, surrounded by 3 other men. I recognized Mr. Henderson, who owned the hardware store, and a guy named Rick, who I think did plumbing. They were laughing. Martin was leaning back in his chair, one arm draped over the back, looking like a man without a care in the world. He saw me and waved. A big, sweeping gesture. "There she is," he announced. "The prodigal daughter." The men turned and smiled. I forced a smile onto my own face. It felt tight, like a mask that was 2 sizes too small. "Hi, Dad," I said, approaching the table. "Hi, Mr. Henderson. Hi, Rick, Audrey. You are looking city sharp." "Mr. Henderson said, nodding at my blazer. "Just trying to look employable," I joked. Martin stood up and pulled out a chair for me. Sit. You want a coffee scone?" "My treat. I am okay." "Dad," I said, "I do not want to interrupt your time with the guys. I just have that paper for the landlord. I have to get it scanned and emailed before 5. Martin waved a hand. "Business first," he said to the table. "See? She is a hustler, just like her old man." He turned to me, his eyes bright and friendly. "Let us see this bureaucratic nightmare," he said. I opened the manila folder. My hands were steady now. The cold calm of the hunter had settled over me. I slid the document across the table. "It is really basic," I said, keeping my voice light. "Just says you are holding the inheritance and it is mine. Standard safekeeping stuff." Martin put on his reading glasses. He picked up the paper. He held it at arm's length. The table went quiet. The other men watched respectfully, witnessing business being done. Martin read the first paragraph. He nodded. "Receipt of funds." Sure. He read the second paragraph. "Sole property of Audrey Brooks. Deposited into an account under my control." He paused. His finger stopped on the line. He looked up at me over the rim of his glasses. The smile was still there, but it had thinned. The warmth had dropped a few degrees. "Funds held in trust." He read aloud. "That sounds a little formal, doesn't it? In trust, I mean. We are not a bank." "Audie," he chuckled, inviting the other men to laugh with him. They gave polite, low grunts of amusement. "I know," I said, rolling my eyes. "I told the landlord it was just a family thing, but he sent me this template. He said it has to use the legal words, or he cannot accept it as proof of assets. You know how they are about liability." Martin looked back at the paper. "I just do not like this word trust," he said, his voice lowering. "It makes it sound like a legal contract. I thought this was just a memo." "It is," I said. I leaned in, dropping my voice to match his. "Dad, honestly, I do not care what it says. I just need to show him I have access to the cash so he does not evict me. It is just standard wording." Martin hesitated. I saw the calculation behind his eyes. He was weighing the risk of the word trust against the embarrassment of making a scene in front of his friends. If he refused to sign, he would have to explain why. He would have to admit that maybe he wasn't holding the money as purely as he claimed. And right now, he was the benevolent father helping his daughter with a mean landlord. "And you say he needs this by 5? Martin asked. "Yeah," I said, "or I have to pay a late fee on the renewal." He sighed. He shook his head theatrically. "The red tape we go through these days." He said to Mr. Henderson, "You believe this? I have to sign a permission slip to hold my own daughter's money. The world is going to hell." Martin, Mr. Henderson agreed. Martin pulled a pen from his shirt pocket. It was a nice pen, a heavy silver ballpoint. "All right," he said, "let us get this over with." He pressed the pen to the paper. I watched the tip of the pen. I watched the ink flow. "Martin Brooks." He signed it with a flourish. He dated it, October 25th. He pushed the paper back to me. "There you go," he said. "Tell your landlord to stick it." I took the paper. I felt a surge of triumph so intense it almost made me dizzy. I wanted to grab the paper and run, but I forced myself to move slowly. I closed the folder. "Thanks, Dad," I said, You are a lifesaver. Seriously. This takes so much pressure off. Anytime. Honey, he said. He was already turning back to his friends. The moment dismissed. Now. Rick, you were saying about that zoning issue on 3rd Street. I stood up. I will let you guys get back to it. I said, bye, Dad. Love you. Love you too. Kiddo, he said without looking up. I walked out of St. Eliza's. The heavy wooden door closed behind me, shutting out the smell of coffee and the sound of my father's voice. I walked straight to my car. I got in and locked the doors. I turned on the dome light. I opened the folder. There it was. The signature. The admission. I acknowledged that these funds are the sole property of Audrey Brooks. He had signed it. He had legally admitted that the money was mine, that he had it, and that he was obligated to return it. He thought he was signing a prop for a landlord. He had actually signed a confession. I didn't wait. I pulled out my phone. I used a scanning app to take a high-resolution photo of the document. I adjusted the corners until it was perfectly flat and legible. I emailed it to myself. I emailed it to Leah. I emailed it to Tessa Rourke. Then, I saved the image to my phone's camera roll and to the cloud. I sat back in the driver's seat and exhaled. My hands were shaking again, but this time it wasn't fear. It was the release of tension. I wasn't done yet. Tessa had told me to lock it down. I opened my text thread with Martin, just scanned it and sent it off to the landlord. He replied instantly and said, "It is perfect. Thanks again for confirming you are holding my $12,300. This helps so much with the application." I waited. I needed him to acknowledge the text. I needed him to not dispute the number. 5 minutes later, a reply. "Glad to help. Now go get some rest." He didn't dispute it. He accepted the thanks. He accepted the number. I started the car. I drove out of Marlow Harbor as the sun began to set, casting long shadows across the lake. The water looked black and cold. For the next 3 days, I was quiet. I let the silence stretch. I wanted him to feel comfortable. I wanted him to think the problem was solved. Then, on November 1st, I pulled the string. I texted him in the morning. "Hey, Dad. Good news. The lease is sorted. I am actually going to need to grab that cash now to pay the deposit and the movers. Can we arrange a transfer for tomorrow? Or a cashier's check? Whatever is easier." I stared at the phone. This was the test. The document said he would return it on request. The request was made. No response. I waited an hour, 2 hours. I called him. It went to voicemail. "Hey, it is Martin. Leave a message." I didn't leave a message. I texted again. "Dad. Just checking in on the transfer. I need to schedule the movers for Thursday, so I need the funds to clear. At 4 o'clock. A reply finally came. It wasn't the breezy Martin of St. Eliza's. It was the clipped, professional Martin he used when a client was complaining about a delay. "Hey, caught up in a job site mess. Listen, bank has a hold on the account right now. Some sort of fraud check because of a vendor payment I made. Might take a few days to clear everything up. Can't move anything until they lift the flag." I read the text. Fraud check. It was a classic delay tactic. I opened my spreadsheet. I typed in the new excuse. Date November 1st. Excuse bank fraud hold. Status stalling. I replied, "Oh no, that is annoying. Did they say how long I really need to pay the movers by Friday? They said 48 to 72 hours. Martin replied, "Bureaucracy. Do not worry. It is safe. Just lock down." I waited 48 hours. On November 3rd. I texted again. "Hey, Dad. Any update on the fraud hold? Movers are pressing me." This time, the excuse shifted. "Hold is lifted, but now there is a transfer window limit," he wrote. Audrey. "Hey, Dad. Did you make it to the branch?" Martin truck broke down on the way. Nightmare. Monday for sure. November 8th. Audrey, Dad. I really need this. I'm putting the movers on a credit card and the interest is killing me. Martin, I am trying. Audrey, stop hounding me. The bank is giving me the runaround. They need to verify the source of the funds again because it came from the estate. It is complicated. This was a mistake. He had just claimed the bank needed to verify the source of funds weeks after the check had cleared. That wasn't how banking worked. I forwarded the screenshot to Tessa. "He is panicked," Tessa said. "He is making up rules that do not exist. He knows he is cornered. But I do not have the money." I said, "I was sitting on my floor again. The apartment was cold. I had not turned on the heat to save money. I have a piece of paper." "Tessa, I cannot pay rent with a piece of paper. You have more than a piece of paper." "Audrey," Tessa said, "you have a timeline. The agreement said November 15th. That is the deadline. If he does not pay by then, he is in breach of contract. And because he signed that paper acknowledging he held it in trust, he is also in breach of fiduciary duty." "What does that mean?" I asked. "It means on November 16th, we stop asking." Tessa said, "We demand, and if he does not pay, we do not just sue him for the money, we sue him for triple damages. We threaten to expose him." I hung up. I looked at the calendar. November 15th was a week away. I texted Martin one more time. "Okay, Dad, I understand it is complicated, but the agreement we signed says the funds have to be released by the 15th. That is next Tuesday. Please make sure it is sorted by then. I cannot wait any longer." He did not reply. The silence that followed was different. It wasn't the silence of a busy man. It was the silence of a man who was looking at a wall and realizing there was no door. I went to work the next day. The mood in the office was grim. People were packing boxes. The restructuring was happening. My boss called me into her office at 2:00. "Audrey," she said. She looked tired. "You know I value your work. I knew what was coming. We are eliminating your role," she said. "Your last day is the 30th. I nodded. I didn't cry. I felt strangely detached. "Okay," I said. "Thank you for letting me know." I walked back to my desk. I had 2 weeks of employment left. I had $300 in my checking account, and my father had $12,300 of my money that he was refusing to give back. I opened the folder on my phone. I looked at the signature. Martin Brooks. He thought that paper was a shield. He thought it proved he was a good father protecting his daughter from the world. He was wrong. It was a receipt, and I was coming to collect. That weekend, I drove down to Marlow Harbor. I didn't tell him I was coming. I didn't go to the house. I parked down the street from the Ridgeview Grill and just watched. I saw his truck, the loaner Silverado, parked in the lot. I saw him walk out with Diane. They looked happy. He was laughing, holding the door for her. He looked like a man who had everything under control. I felt a flash of rage so hot it burned my throat. How dared he? How dared he eat steak and laugh while I was counting pennies and losing my job? How dared he use my grandmother's legacy to prop up his own ego? I pulled out my phone. I texted him from the car, watching him unlock the truck. "Dad, I lost my job today." I watched him stop. He pulled his phone out of his pocket. He read the text. I saw his shoulders slump. For a second, he looked old. He looked tired. He typed a reply. "Oh, honey, I am so sorry. Come home. We will figure it out. Family first. Family first." It made me want to scream. He wanted me to come home so I would be under his roof again, dependent on him, eating his food, sleeping in my old bed. He wanted me to be the child so he didn't have to be the thief. I didn't reply. I put the car in gear and drove back to Cleveland. I wasn't going home. I was going to war. The 15th came and went. No money appeared, no transfer, just a long, rambling text about liquidity issues and short-term bonds that he claimed he had accidentally locked the money into. "I thought I was doing the right thing trying to grow it for you." He wrote, "Now the penalty for early withdrawal is huge. Can we just wait another month?" It was a lie. He hadn't bought bonds. You couldn't buy bonds with a third-party check at a teller window in 5 minutes. I forwarded the text to Tessa. "Pull the trigger," I said, the next morning. Tessa sent the demand letter. It wasn't friendly. It wasn't from a daughter. It was from the law office of Tessa Rourke. "Dear Mr. Brooks, we represent Audrey Brooks regarding the sum of $12,300 held by you in trust pursuant to the safekeeping agreement dated October 25th. You are in breach of this agreement. Demand is hereby made for the immediate return of the full principal amount. Failure to remit payment within 72 hours will result in legal action, including but not limited to claims for breach of contract, conversion, and breach of fiduciary duty. Tessa sent it via email and certified mail. I was sitting at my kitchen table when my phone rang. It was Martin. I stared at the screen. The name Dad flashed bright and demanding. I didn't answer. It rang again, and again. Then the text started. What the hell is this? Audrey, a lawyer, seriously. After everything I have done for you, you are abandoning your family over money. Pick up the phone. I turned the phone over, face down. The vibration rattled the table. He was furious. He was hurt. He was terrified. The paper had done its job. The lie was over. Now, the truth was the only thing left, and it was going to destroy us both. I walked to the window and looked out at the city. It was raining. The gray sky matched the gray feeling in my chest. I had trapped him. I had won the strategic victory. But as I listened to my phone buzz against the wood, sounding like a trapped insect, I didn't feel like a winner. I felt like an orphan. My father was not the man I thought he was, and after this, I would never be the daughter he wanted me to be. The inheritance had cost me my father, and I was beginning to realize that was a price I had to pay. I sat in my apartment, the silence amplified by the rain drumming against the window pane. The city of Cleveland was gray and weeping, matching the cold pit in my stomach. On the table before me lay the safekeeping agreement, a piece of paper that had transformed from a shield into a sword. It was November 16th. The deadline had passed. I picked up my phone. My hands were steady, but it was a forced, rigid steadiness, the kind you summon when you are about to cut a wire on a bomb. I opened the text thread with my father. The last message was his plea for another month, a desperate, rambling excuse about bonds and penalties. I did not reply to his content. I replied to the contract. Dad, I typed, keeping the words mechanical, per the safekeeping agreement signed on October 25th. The deadline to return the funds held in trust was yesterday. November 15th, I am formally requesting the immediate release of the full $12,300 to my account. Please confirm the transfer has been initiated. I hit send. It felt like firing a gun. The response did not come immediately. For 3 hours. The phone sat silent. I imagined him staring at it, his face flushing that deep, angry red I had seen so many times when a referee made a call he did not like. He would be pacing his kitchen, muttering to my mother, spinning a narrative where he was the victim of an ungrateful child. When the phone finally buzzed, it was a wall of text. Audrey, I am sitting here looking at your picture on the mantle, the one from your high school graduation. I remember how proud I was that day. I have always done everything for you. Put food on the table, fixed your cars, bailed you out when things got tough. Now you are sending me demands like I am some stranger, like I am a bank teller. We are family. Blood is thicker than money. Audrey, I am trying to build something for you, trying to protect you, and you are treating me with such disrespect. It breaks my heart. I raised you better than this. I read it twice. He had used every trigger word in the manual. Family, blood, disrespect, heart, but the one word he had not used was transfer. He had not mentioned the money. He had not given a date. He was trying to drown the debt in guilt. I forwarded the text to Tessa Rourke. Go, I typed. Tessa did not hesitate. The demand letter went out via email and certified mail that afternoon. It was polite, professional, and devastatingly clear. It attached the signed agreement. It referenced the specific statute regarding fiduciary duty. It gave him 72 hours. The reaction was nuclear. My phone rang at 7 o'clock that evening. I answered it. You lawyered up? Martin screamed. The sound of his voice was so loud I had to pull the phone away from my ear. You sent a lawyer after your own father, Dad, I said, trying to keep my voice calm. I just want the money back. You signed the paper. It is a piece of paper, he shouted. It was for your landlord. You tricked me. You came into Eliza smiled at my friends, and tricked me into signing a legal trap. You are a snake, Audrey. A snake. I did not trick you. I said, I asked you to confirm you were holding my money. You signed it because you said you were holding it. If you have it, just send it. There was a pause, a ragged breathing sound on the other end. Then, the tone shifted. The anger evaporated, replaced by a wet, choking sob. Audrey. He wept. His voice broke into fragments. How can you do this to me? I am your dad. I love you. You are abandoning me. Everyone else leaves. But not you. Not my Audie. Please, do not do this. Do not destroy this family over cash. The sobbing was visceral. It was the sound of a man crumbling. A year ago, it would have broken me. I would have apologized. I would have told him to keep the money just to stop the sound of his pain. But today, I looked at the spreadsheet on my laptop. Status stalling. I am not abandoning you. Dad, I said, my voice flat. I am asking for my inheritance. Why can you not give it to me? He hung up. I stared at the disconnected screen. He had pivoted from rage to grief in 6 seconds. It was a performance. It had to be. But the desperation in his voice felt real, and that terrified me more than the anger. I needed to see my mother. I drove to Marlow Harbor the next morning. I did not tell them I was coming. I waited until I knew Martin would be at his coffee hour, and I parked down the street, walking the last block to the house. The house looked the same, but tired. The gutters were full of leaves. The paint on the front porch was peeling. I let myself in with my key. Mom, I called out. Diane Brooks was in the kitchen, folding laundry at the table. When she saw me, she dropped a towel. Her face went pale. Audrey, she whispered, you should not be here. He is in a state. I am not here for him. Mom, I said. I walked over and sat down across from her. I am here for you. I need to know what is happening. Diane looked away. She picked up the towel and began folding it again, her fingers moving with nervous, jerky motions. He is just hurt. Audrey, she said, he feels like you do not trust him. I do not trust him, I said, and neither do you. She froze. Mom, I said, reaching across the table to touch her hand. Her skin felt paper thin. He spent it. I know he spent it. I just need to know on what. Is he gambling? Is it a woman? Is it drugs? Diane pulled her hand away. No, she said, looking shocked. God, no. Audrey, nothing like that. He is a good man. Then where is the $12,300? I asked. She looked at the pile of laundry. She looked at the window. She looked everywhere but at me. It was urgent, she whispered. Just temporary. He had to cover something. He meant to put it back. He really did. He was waiting for a check from a big job in Toledo. It got delayed. What was urgent I pressed. She shook her head. I cannot say. He told me not to worry about it. He handles the finances. I stood up. I walked over to the counter where the mail was piled. Usually, the counter was spotless. Now, it was a drift of envelopes. Audrey, do not, Diane said, half rising from her chair. I flipped through the stack. Junk mail, a catalog. Then, a windowed envelope from Stonebrook Auto Finance. It was marked past due. Beneath it was another one, Harbor Line Medical Billing, final notice. I held them up. New truck, I asked. My voice trembling. He bought the Silverado with my money. No, Diane said, tears spilling over. No, the truck is a lease. He needed it for work. The old one was dying. He could not work without a truck. And the medical bills, I asked. Are you sick? Is he? Diane sank back into her chair, covering her face with her hands. It is his back, she sobbed. He has been going to a specialist in Columbus. Insurance would not cover the injections. He was in so much pain. Audrey, he could barely walk some mornings. I felt a pang of sympathy, sharp and sudden. But then I looked at the date on the medical bill. It was from 6 months ago. The balance was $4,000. He took 12,000. Mom, I said, this is 4. Where is the rest? Diane just wept. She was a broken dam, leaking fear she had been holding back for years. The front door slammed. I spun around. Martin was standing in the hallway. He was wearing his work boots and the canvas jacket. He looked sweaty, his hair disheveled. When he saw me, his eyes widened, then narrowed. Ambush, he spat. You are ambushing your mother now. I am not ambushing anyone. I said, I am looking for answers you will not give me. I held up the envelopes. Is this it? I asked. The truck. The back injections. Is that where my restart went? Martin stormed into the kitchen. He snatched the envelopes from my hand and threw them onto the counter. That is none of your business, he shouted. You think you can just waltz in here and audit my life? I put a roof over your head for 18 years. I paid for your braces. I paid for your prom dress. You owe me. I do not owe you Grandma's money, I yelled back. He flinched. The mention of Evelyn seemed to hit him harder than anything else. He leaned against the counter, breathing heavily. The fight seemed to drain out of him, leaving him looking deflated and small. Look, he said, his voice dropping to a rasp. I am in a tight spot. Audie, okay, I admit it. Things have been slow. Materials are up. Clients are slow to pay. I just needed a bridge. A bridge, I repeated. I will pay you back, he said. He looked at me with pleading eyes. I will. I just need time. I will sell something. I will sell the table saw. I will sell the boat trailer. Just stop this. Stop the lawyer. Please. He was performing again. The humble man. The victim of the economy. But he still hadn't answered the question. Where did the check go? Dad? I asked. Specifically, did you pay off the truck? He wiped his mouth with the back of his hand. It went into the pot. Audrey, it went to keep the lights on, to keep us afloat. Do you want us to starve? Do you want your mother on the street? He was using survival as a shield. But I looked around the kitchen. There was a new espresso machine on the counter. There was a stack of premium steaks defrosting in the sink. This wasn't a house on the brink of starvation. This was a house on the brink of exposure. I am not stopping the lawyer, I said, not until I see a bank statement. Martin's face hardened. Get out, he said. What? Get out of my house. If you want to be a creditor, go be a creditor. But do not stand in my kitchen and act like my daughter. I looked at Diane. She was still crying, her head on the table. She didn't look up. I walked out. I sat in my car for a moment, shaking. He had kicked me out. He had actually kicked me out. I didn't leave town. I drove 2 streets over and parked in front of Mrs. Higgins' house. Mrs. Higgins was the neighborhood watch in human form. She knew everything. I knocked on her door. She answered in her housecoat, holding a cat. Audrey Brooks, she exclaimed. I saw your car go by. Everything all right, I heard. Well, voices. I am fine. Mrs. Higgins. I said, just a disagreement. Dad is stressed. Stressed. She snorted. I should say so. Working all those odd hours. Odd hours, I asked. She nodded. Leaving at 5 a.m, coming back late, and that man coming around looking for him. What man, I asked, my pulse quickening. Some fellow. She said, big guy, bald, driving a beat-up van. Came by twice last week when Martin was out. Asked me if I knew when he would be home. Said his name was Cal. Cal Jensen. I think Jensen. The name meant nothing to me. He did not look like a friend. Mrs. Higgins whispered conspiratorially. He looked like he was collecting. I thanked her and went back to my car. I pulled out my phone and searched for Cal Jensen, Marlow Harbor. Nothing. I searched Jensen Contracting. A result popped up. Jensen Contracting Supply. It was a small business in the next town over. I searched the county court records on my phone. I typed Martin Brooks. A list appeared. Traffic tickets, a zoning permit, and then, near the top, Jensen Contracting Supply versus Martin Brooks, small claims, filed 3 months ago, status dismissed, settled. He had been sued, and he had settled. Recently, the timeline clicked. The suit was filed 3 months ago. It was settled. I checked the date. October 16th. 2 days after he deposited my check, he had used my inheritance to pay off a lawsuit to avoid a judgment. But the claim amount listed on the docket was only $2,500. That didn't account for the whole $12,000. Where was the rest? My phone buzzed. It was Leah. Audrey. Her text read, "Are you sitting down? I am in my car." I replied, "What is it?" I was looking for a vintage serving platter for the bakery, so I was browsing the local Craigslist and Facebook Marketplace. "Look at this link." I clicked the link. It was a listing on Facebook Marketplace. Vintage mahogany jewelry box. Hand-carved. Includes contents. $800. The photo was grainy, but I knew that box. It was Grandma Evelyn's. It had a distinct rose carved into the lid. It was supposed to be in the attic. Martin had told me he packed it away for safekeeping. And the contents, I zoomed in. Costume jewelry. A few silver rings. A pearl necklace that I knew wasn't real pearls, but had been her favorite. He was selling her memories. For $800. I felt a cold rage settle over me. This wasn't about bills. This wasn't about survival. This was about a man who saw everything in his orbit: his daughter, his mother's heirlooms, his wife's peace of mind as assets to be liquidated to cover his own mistakes. I drove back to the house. I didn't care if he had kicked me out. I walked up the driveway. Martin was outside now, washing the Silverado. He was scrubbing the wheel well with a ferocity that looked painful. He saw me and stopped. He held the hose like a weapon. "I told you to leave," he said. I held up my phone, showing him the picture of the jewelry box. "You are selling Grandma's jewelry?" I asked. My voice was deadly quiet. "Items that weren't left to you." Martin looked at the phone. He didn't flinch. "It is just junk." "Audrey," he said, "costume stuff. It is clutter. It is not yours to sell." I said, "It is my house," he shouted. "It is my mother. I can do what I want with it." He threw the sponge into the bucket. Water splashed onto his boots. "You think you are so high and mighty?" He sneered. "You think you are the only one who loved her? She wanted me to have it. She wanted me to handle things I asked, like you handled my savings jar, like you handled my inheritance." "Yes," he roared. "That is what fathers do. We handle the resources. We decide where the money goes so the family survives. Your grandmother wanted me to handle things because she knew I was the head of this family." The sentence hung in the wet air. She knew I was the head of this family. It wasn't grief. It wasn't desperation. It was entitlement. He truly believed that because he was the patriarch, every dollar, every object, and every person in the family belonged to him. My inheritance wasn't my restart. It was just another resource in his fiefdom. He didn't steal it in his mind. He just reallocated it. I looked at him, a man standing next to a leased truck he couldn't afford, washing it to impress neighbors he didn't like, while selling his dead mother's fake pearls to pay for his mistakes. I realized then that I couldn't shame him into returning the money. You cannot shame a king for taxing his subjects. I have to take him down. I thought, I have to strip the crown. I lowered the phone. "Okay, Dad," I said. I turned and walked away. "Where are you going?" he yelled after me. "Audrey, come back here. We are not done." I got into my car and locked the door. "We are done talking." "Dad," I whispered. I started the engine and drove toward the highway. I had one stop to make before I went back to Cleveland. I needed to find Cal Jensen. Part 5. Tessa Rourke's office was becoming my second home. The fluorescent lights hummed with a low buzz that matched the tension in my head. "We need a scalpel," Tessa said, looking at the notes I had brought back from Marlow Harbor. "Not a hammer." She arranged the index cards on her desk. The receipt-signed agreement, the motive debts/lawsuits, the patterned jewelry box. "We have enough for a civil suit," Tessa said, "but if we want to force a settlement before trial, which saves you money and time, we need to prove exactly where the funds went. We need to trace the flow. If we can prove he used trust funds to pay a personal debt, the judge will not just order repayment. He will grant an attachment of assets. We can put a lien on his house." "The house," I said. "My mother lives there." Tessa looked at me. "Audrey, Your mother is already a casualty. She is hiding bills. She is enabling him. If we do not stop him, he will lose the house anyway. He will mortgage it to pay the next Cal Jensen." I nodded. She was right. Saving the house meant risking the house. "Let us get the records," I said. We started with the estate attorney. I called Mr. Holloway's office and formally requested a copy of the negotiated check, front and back. Since I was the payee, I had a right to see the instrument. It arrived via email 2 hours later. I stared at the image on my screen. The front was standard. Pay to the order of Audrey Brooks, $12,300. The back was the smoking gun. My signature was there, hesitant and small. Below it, Martin's sprawling scrawl, "For deposit only, Martin Brooks," and below that, the bank stamp, Marlowe Community Bank. Teller 4. It was proof he had deposited it. But it didn't prove where it went next. "We need to know who he paid." I said, "Diane knows." I said, "She knows the core secret. She mentioned a private repayment plan. She mentioned urgent. I have to go back to her." I said, "Without him there." I drove back to Marlowe Harbor the next day. I waited until I saw Martin's truck leave the driveway, heading toward the lumberyard. I gave him 10 minutes, then walked to the door. Diane opened it on the first knock. She looked like she hadn't slept. Her eyes were red-rimmed. "He is not here," she said. "I know," I said. "I brought you coffee." I held out a cup from St. Eliza's. She hesitated, then took it. We sat on the back porch this time, away from the pile of envelopes in the kitchen. "Mom," I said gently, "I am filing the lawsuit on Monday." Diane flinched. She stared into her coffee cup. "It will be public," I continued. "Everyone will know. Mr. Henderson, the neighbors, the church. Please, Audrey," she whispered, "do not humiliate him. It will kill him. Then tell me the truth." I said, "If you tell me where the money went, maybe we can work something out. But I cannot fight a ghost." Diane took a trembling sip of coffee. She looked out at the backyard, at the overgrown garden she used to tend. "It wasn't just the truck," she said softly, "or the back. It was the old business failure." "What failure?" I asked. "Martin's business has always been steady." Diane shook her head. 6 years ago," she said, "the spec house on Miller Road. Do you remember?" I frowned. I vaguely remembered him building a house on speculation. "He said he sold it for a profit." "He didn't sell it," Diane said. "He lost it. He leveraged everything to build it, and the market dipped. And the bank called the loan. He was going to lose the business. He was going to lose everything. So he borrowed money," I asked. "Not from a bank." Diane said, "The banks wouldn't touch him. He borrowed it from private parties, people he knew. He signed agreements, promissory notes, and he has been paying them back. He fell behind," she said. "Last month, one of them threatened to garnish his wages. Not legally. He threatened to go to the licensing board and report Martin for financial insolvency. If Martin loses his contractor's license, he is dead in the water." She looked at me, tears streaming down her face. He panicked. "Audrey, the threat came the day before the funeral. He was terrified. Then the inheritance check came, and he saw it as a lifeline. He thought he could grab it, pay off the debt, save his license, and then replace the money before you noticed." I sat back. The puzzle pieces slammed into place. The urgency, the control, the safekeeping. He wasn't stealing from me to buy toys. He was stealing from me to plug a hole in the hull of a sinking ship. "Who was the debt to?" I asked. Diane shook her head. "I do not know the name. He keeps the file locked in his truck. But he sent the check. He mailed it the day after the deposit." I stood up. I kissed my mother on the top of her head. "Thank you, Mom," I said. I walked to my car. I didn't know the name, but I had a lead. Cal Jensen. Mrs. Higgins said he had been looking for Martin. The court records showed a settlement. I found Cal Jensen in the parking lot of the IGA grocery store. I had called the number for Jensen Contracting Supply and asked for a meeting. He agreed. Sounding confused, He was a big man, balding, wearing a polo shirt with his company logo. He didn't look like a loan shark. He looked like a guy who coached Little League. "Ms. Brooks," he asked, leaning against his van. "You are Martin's girl." "Yes," I said. "I wanted to ask you about the lawsuit, the small claims case." Cal sighed. He rubbed the back of his neck. "Look, I did not want to sue your dad. Me and Martin go way back, but business is business. He owed me for materials from 3 years ago. Drywall and studs. He kept saying, 'Next month, next month.' I finally had to file. And he paid you." I asked. "Yeah," Cal said. "Settled up last month. Came through with a cashier's check. How much was it? 2,500? Cal said. "And change." That was the small claims amount. It didn't explain the other 10,000. "Did he owe anyone else?" I asked. "Was anyone else pressing him?" Cal laughed. A dry, humorless sound. "Martin owes everyone. Darlin'. That is how he operates. Robbing Peter to pay Paul. But the big one, the one he was really sweating, was the Pierce debt." "Pierce?" I asked. My stomach did a slow roll. "Like Holloway and Pierce. The law firm." Cal shook his head. "No, not the lawyers. Evelyn Pierce." I stared at him. "My grandmother's name was Evelyn Brooks." "No," Cal said. "Evelyn Pierce. Different lady. Lives over in Crestwood. Rich. Widow of some factory owner. Martin built a sunroom for her years ago. Rumor was he borrowed a chunk of change from her to float that spec house he built. Evelyn Pierce. The name was so similar to my grandmother's. Evelyn. Why would he borrow from a woman named Evelyn Pierce?" "Wait," I said. "You said he paid you 2,500. Do you know if he paid her?" Cal shrugged. "All I know is, I saw him at the post office the day he paid me. He was mailing 2 envelopes, one to me and one to her. He looked relieved, like he had just dodged a bullet." I thanked Cal and got into my car. Evelyn Pierce. I pulled out my phone and searched the name. Evelyn Pierce, Crestwood, Ohio. An obituary popped up. Evelyn Pierce, 88, passed away October 10th. October 10th, 4 days before my grandmother's funeral, if she died. Her estate would be calling in debts. Her executors would be looking at her books. If Martin owed her money, her death would trigger a demand for repayment. Immediate repayment. The threat didn't come from a loan shark. It came from an estate. Just like my money came from an estate. I drove straight to Holloway and Pierce. I stormed past the receptionist. I went straight to Mr. Holloway's door and knocked. He looked up, surprised. "Audrey." "Do you have an appointment?" I sat down. "Who is Evelyn Pierce?" I asked. "Mr. Holloway froze. His face went carefully blank. "I am not sure I know who you mean," he said. "Do not lie to me." I said, "Is she related to this firm Holloway and Pierce, Mr.?" Holloway took off his glasses. He wiped them slowly. "My late partner's wife," he said. "And did my father owe her money, Mr.?" Holloway sighed. He looked at the file on his desk. "Audrey, that is a separate matter. It is client privilege. Martin used my inheritance to pay off a debt to your partner's widow. Didn't he?" I asked. My voice was rising. "That is why you suggested the check could be issued to me directly, but then let him take it. You knew he needed the cash to pay the debt to your firm's family." "Mr. Holloway stood up. "That is a serious accusation. Audrey, I had no knowledge of what Martin intended to do with your distribution. I simply executed your grandmother's will. But you knew he was in debt to the Pierce estate," I pressed, "and you knew the Pierce estate was calling in debts." He didn't answer. His silence was an admission. The safekeeping idea wasn't just Martin's. It was nudged. The pressure was coming from inside the room. Martin was being squeezed by the very people handing me the check. He took the check from one hand and handed it back to the other, using me as the conduit to wash the debt. I stood up. "I am going to court. Mr. Holloway," I said, "and I'm going to subpoena the records of the Evelyn Pierce estate. If I find a payment from Martin Brooks dated October 15th, I am reporting you to the Bar Association for conflict of interest." Mr. Holloway went pale. "Audrey, wait," he said. I walked out. I called Tessa from the parking lot. "File it," I said. "File the civil claim. We have the proof Tessa asked. We have the motive." I said, "We have the timeline, and we have the destination." He paid the Evelyn Pierce estate to cover a promissory note. Tessa worked fast. The complaint was filed the next morning. Audrey Brooks versus Martin Brooks, Count 1 breach of contract, Count 2 breach of fiduciary duty, Count 3 conversion. Exhibit A. The safekeeping agreement. The court date was set for December 2nd. It was no longer a family secret, it was a docket number. I received a notification from the court system 2 days later. Service had been perfected. The sheriff had delivered the summons to Martin Brooks at his home address. I imagined him holding the papers. I imagined the shame burning through him. He couldn't charm a summons. He couldn't gaslight a judge. He was trapped. But the trap wasn't just about money anymore. It was about exposing the entire architecture of lies he had built his life on. The spec house, the loans, the borrowing from Peter to pay Paul. I sat in my apartment, staring at the rain. I had won. The legal gears were turning. But I felt a hollow ache in my chest. I remembered the man who helped me sift through the dirt for my quarters when I was 8. I remembered the man who bought me tires. I realized that even the tires were probably bought with money he had borrowed from someone else. There was no hero. There was only a man juggling debts. And I was just the first person who refused to be a ball in the air. The phone rang. It wasn't Martin. It was Diane. "He is gone," she said. Her voice was flat. "Gone?" I asked. "He packed a bag." She said, "He took the truck. He said he is not going to court. He said he is not going to let his own daughter stand up and call him a thief in public. Where did he go? I do not know." Diane said, "But Audrey, he left the jewelry box." I closed my eyes. "I will be there." "Mom," I said. The court date was approaching. Martin was running, but he couldn't run from the paper he had signed. That paper was a tether, and I was reeling him in, inch by painful inch. The final showdown wouldn't be in a kitchen, it would be in a courtroom, where reputations went to die. The morning of December 2nd was cold. The kind of biting, windless cold that seeps through the soles of your shoes. I stood outside the Cuyahoga County Courthouse, clutching my binder against my chest like a breastplate. I had dressed intentionally for this moment. I wore a charcoal gray blazer, black slacks, and low heels. I wore no makeup. I pulled my hair back into a tight, severe ponytail. I wanted to look like the truth unvarnished, plain, and undeniable. Beside me, Tessa Rourke checked her watch. "He is late," she said, her breath pluming in the frigid air. "Of course he is." I said, "He wants to make an entrance. He wants the judge to be waiting for him." Martin Brooks did not believe in being on time for things he did not respect. He was late for weddings. He was late for baptisms. He was only early for job sites where he was the boss. 10 minutes after the session was scheduled to begin, a silver Silverado pulled up to the curb in a no-parking zone. Martin jumped out. He looked like he was on his way to a wedding. He wore his best navy suit, the one with the pinstripes that were just a little too wide, and a silk tie that shimmered gold in the gray light. He had shaved perfectly. He smelled of cologne and confidence. He strode toward the steps, ignoring the parking enforcement officer who was already eyeing the truck. He spotted me and Tessa standing near the metal detectors. "Audrey," he called out, his voice booming. "There she is." He walked up to us, smiling as if we were meeting for lunch. He reached out to hug me. I took a step back. "Do not, Dad," I said. Martin's hands dropped. He looked at Tessa, then back at me. He shook his head, a look of benevolent pity on his face. "Still doing this?" "Huh," he asked, dragging the family laundry out onto the sidewalk. "We are here for the hearing." "Martin," Tessa said sharply. "You are late." "Traffic," Martin said, waving a hand. "Nightmare on the bridge. But I am here, ready to clear this misunderstanding up." He leaned in toward me, lowering his voice. "Listen, Audie, can I talk to you for a second? Just us, before we go in there and waste everyone's time." I looked at Tessa. She gave a microscopic nod. 2 minutes, I said. Martin guided me a few feet away. Near a marble pillar, he sighed, adjusting his cufflinks. Look, honey, he said, I know you are mad. I get it. You feel like I stepped on your toes. But this? Courts, lawyers. It is too much. It is embarrassing. For you. For me. I asked. Yes. For you, he said earnestly. Do you want the whole town knowing you sued your father because you couldn't wait a few months for a payout? It makes you look desperate, unstable. I stared at him. He was doing it again. He was rewriting reality in real time. I am not the one who spent the money. Dad, I said. Martin winced. Spent is a harsh word. He said, I utilized it for the family. Look, here's the deal. I brought a check. He reached into his jacket pocket and pulled out a folded personal check. $5,000, he said. Right now, today, you take this, you drop the suit, and we work out a payment plan for the rest over the next year. Just between us, no judges, no records. I looked at the check, $5,000. It was less than half. And it was a personal check, drawn on the same account that had swallowed my inheritance. Is this good, I asked? If I took this to the bank right now, would it clear? Martin hesitated, just for a fraction of a second. His eyes flicked to the left. I have to move some things around this afternoon, he said. But by tomorrow, solid as a rock. It was a lie. He was trying to buy my silence with a piece of paper that would bounce. He just wanted me to dismiss the case so he could walk out of here and say he won. I stepped back. No, I said, Audrey, be reasonable. He hissed, his face flushing. This is a compromise. This is how adults handle things. No, Dad, I said, adults keep their promises. I turned and walked back to Tessa. Let us go, I said. We walked through the security checkpoint. I did not look back, but I could hear Martin muttering to his attorney, a man I recognized as a zoning lawyer who usually handled fence disputes. The courtroom was small and smelled of floor wax. It was not a high-drama criminal court. It was a place of paperwork and patience. The judge, an older woman named Judge Sterling, sat behind a high oak bench. She looked like she had heard every lie ever told in the state of Ohio and was impressed by none of them. We took our seats at the plaintiff's table. Martin and his lawyer, Mr. Gantry, sat at the defense table. Martin sat tall, looking around the room, nodding at the bailiff like he was hosting a party. The bailiff called the case, Brooks versus Brooks. Tessa stood up. Your Honor, she began, her voice clear and cool. This is a straightforward case of breach of contract and conversion. On October 25th, the defendant signed a safekeeping agreement acknowledging that he was holding $12,300 in trust for the plaintiff. Audrey Brooks. The agreement specified that funds would be returned upon request by November 15th. The demand was made. The funds were not returned. Tessa walked to the bench and handed the bailiff the binder. Exhibit A, Your Honor, the signed agreement. Exhibit B, text messages from the defendant confirming the amount and the timeline. Judge Sterling put on her reading glasses. She opened the binder. She read the agreement. She read the texts. She looked up at Martin. Mr. Brooks, she said. Did you sign this document? Martin stood up. He buttoned his jacket. Your Honor, he said, using his deepest, most charming baritone. I did sign it, but you have to understand the context. This was a family matter. My daughter was going through a hard time, a breakup, job issues. I was just trying to help her budget. That paper, it was just something she typed up to show a landlord. It was not meant to be a formal contract. It was a prop, Judge Sterling asked. Her eyebrows went up. Yes, ma'am, Martin said, smiling conspiratorially. You know how kids are today. They need paperwork for everything. I signed it to help her get an apartment. It was a gesture of love. The money, well, the money was really a family gift. From my mother. And as the head of the family, I have always managed the assets for everyone. Mr. Gantry, Martin's lawyer, stood up. Your Honor, we argue that the funds were commingled with family assets with the plaintiff's consent, and that the agreement was invalid due to lack of consideration. It was a gratuitous promise, not a binding contract. Tessa was on her feet instantly. Your Honor, the agreement explicitly states funds held in trust for Audrey Brooks. It acknowledges receipt of specific funds from the estate. And as for consideration, the plaintiff surrendered possession of the check to the defendant in exchange for his promise of safekeeping. That is a bailment. That is a contract. Judge Sterling held up a hand. Mr. Brooks, she said, I'm looking at a text message here from November 1st. Your daughter asks for the transfer. You reply, bank has a hold on the account. Fraud check. Might take a few days? Martin nodded. Yes. Well, there were some banking issues. Then on November 5th, the judge continued, reading from the page. You wrote transfer window limit. I have to go to the branch. Correct, Martin said. Bureaucracy. And on November 8th, you wrote, the bank needs to verify the source of funds. Martin shifted his weight. He was starting to sweat. I could see the sheen on his forehead. So, Mr. Brooks, the judge said, lowering the binder. Which is it? Is the money a family gift that you manage? Or is it your daughter? Is money that is trapped by bank errors? Because you seem to be telling your daughter one thing and this court another. Martin opened his mouth. He looked at Mr. Gantry. Mr. Gantry looked at his shoes. It is complicated. Your Honor, Martin said, the funds they are invested. I put them in a bond. To grow them? For her. A bond, Judge Sterling asked. Yes, a short-term bond. Audrey, Tessa whispered to me. Look at the date. I looked at the text log in my binder. On November 1st. He said it was a fraud hold. Now, under oath, he was saying it was a bond. Mr. Brooks, Judge Sterling said, her voice dropping an octave. A moment ago, you said you were stopped by a fraud check. Now you say it is in a bond. Where is the money right now if I ordered you to write a check today? Could you do it? Martin gripped the edge of the table. His knuckles were white. The charm was gone. The performance was crumbling. I cannot liquidate it immediately, he stammered. There are penalties. I was trying to maximize the return. I am a businessman. I make smart moves. So you admit you do not have the liquid funds the judge asked. I have assets, Martin shouted, his composure snapping. I have a house. I have a truck. I am good for it. My daughter knows I am good for it. She is just being vindictive. Judge Sterling stared at him. The silence in the room was heavy. Sit down, Mr. Brooks, she said. Martin sank into his chair. He looked small. He looked like the day I found him washing the truck. Then, the doors at the back of the courtroom opened. A young woman walked in. She was carrying a leather portfolio. I recognized her instantly. It was Sarah, the paralegal from Halloway and Pierce. Your Honor, Sarah said, walking past the bar. I apologize for the interruption. I am appearing on behalf of the estate of Evelyn Brooks, pursuant to a subpoena duces tecum regarding the distribution of assets. Judge Sterling looked at her. Proceed. Sarah walked to the witness stand. She did not look at me. She did not look at Martin. We received a request for records regarding the check issued to Audrey Brooks. Sarah said, upon reviewing the physical file in preparation for this hearing, we discovered a supplemental note attached to the will. It was handwritten by the deceased, Evelyn Brooks, and instructed to be delivered to Audrey Brooks only in the event of a dispute. Martin sat up straighter. What note, he demanded. Mom never left a note. Sarah pulled a small, yellowed piece of stationery from her portfolio. She handed it to the bailiff, who handed it to the judge. Judge Sterling read it in silence. Her expression softened. She looked at me. Ms. Brooks, the judge said, I am going to read this into the record. She adjusted her glasses. To my granddaughter, Audrey, I am leaving you this specific sum, $12,300, because it is the exact amount I had in my own savings jar when I left my husband, your grandfather, in 1972. I went back to him later, for the children. But having that money gave me the courage to walk out the door. I never spent it. I kept it as a reminder that I could leave if I had to. I fear your father has inherited his father's need to control the purse strings. He means well, but he suffocates. I am giving you this restart not to buy furniture, but to buy your freedom. If you are reading this, it means he has tried to take it. Do not let him. Claim your life. I felt the tears before I knew I was crying. They were hot and fast, blurring my vision. Grandma Evelyn hadn't just left me money. She had left me a lesson. She knew. She knew Martin would try to absorb it. She knew he would frame it as protection. She had set up the inheritance as a test, a final push to force me to stand up to the giant in my life. $12,300. It wasn't random. It was her freedom fund, and now it was mine. I looked at Martin. He was staring at the floor. His face was a mask of shock. He had spent his whole life claiming he was the only one who understood his mother, the only one she trusted, and she had left a note from the grave warning me against him. It shattered him. I could see the cracks forming in his ego, deep and irreparable. Judge Sterling set the note down. She took off her glasses. "Mr. Brooks," she said. Her voice was no longer impatient. It was cold. "Your mother seemed to know you better than you know yourself." She picked up her gavel. "I am finding for the plaintiff, but I am going further. Mr. Brooks, you have given contradictory testimony regarding the location of these funds. You have claimed bank holds, transfer limits, and bonds. The court finds your credibility to be non-existent." She turned to the court reporter. "I am ordering a full accounting. Mr. Brooks, you are to provide certified bank statements for all accounts under your control from October 14th to the present. You will provide them to this court and to the plaintiff's counsel within 7 days. We need to trace exactly where this money went." Martin stood up. "Your Honor," he said, his voice shaking, "that is private. My business records." "If you do not provide them," the judge interrupted, "I will hold you in contempt, and I will issue a referral to the prosecutor's office for potential fraud charges. Do you understand?" Martin nodded. He couldn't speak. "You have 7 days. Mr. Brooks, do not test me." She banged the gavel. "All rise." The room stood up. I sat there for a moment, unable to move. I had won. I had the judgment. I had the truth. Tessa touched my shoulder. "We did it," she whispered. I stood up and gathered my binder. My hands were trembling. We walked out into the hallway. Martin was already there. Leaning against the wall, he looked like he had aged 10 years in 20 minutes. "Mr. Gantry was whispering to him, but Martin wasn't listening. He saw me come out. He pushed off the wall. "Audrey," he croaked. I stopped. "The note," he said. "Is it real?" Did she really write that I opened my binder? Sarah had given me a copy. I pulled it out and held it up. "It is her handwriting." "Dad," I said, "you know it is." Martin looked at the looping script. He reached out a hand to touch it, then pulled back. She compared me to him. He whispered, "To Dad." She hated how Dad controlled the money. She always said he made her feel like a beggar in her own house. He looked at me, his eyes wide and wet. "Is that how I make you feel, like a beggar?" I looked at him. I saw the fear in his eyes, the fear of a man who has suddenly seen his own reflection and recognized a monster. "Yes, Dad," I said, "that is exactly how you make me feel. Like I have to ask permission to be an adult. Like I am too stupid to handle my own life." Martin let out a ragged breath. He leaned his head back against the wall and closed his eyes. "I spent it," he whispered. "I know." I said. "I paid the Pierce estate," he said. "The lawyers." Holloway knew. He pressured me. He said they would garnish the business accounts. I panicked. "Audie, I panicked." He opened his eyes. "I am broke. Audrey, the business is gone. The house is mortgaged to the hilt. I have been moving money around for 5 years just to keep the lights on. I thought one big job would fix it. It is always one big job away." He slid down the wall until he was crouching, his expensive suit bunching at the knees. "I am sorry," he sobbed. "I am so sorry." I looked down at him. Part of me wanted to kneel down and hug him. Part of me wanted to say it was okay. that we would fix it. That was the daughter in me, trained for 33 years to soothe his ego. But then I thought of the text messages. I thought of the lies. I thought of the safekeeping. I did not kneel. You have 7 days to produce the records. Dad, I said, Tessa will handle the rest. I turned and walked away. I pushed through the heavy double doors of the courthouse and stepped out into the cold. The wind hit my face, sharp and cleansing. My mother was waiting at the bottom of the steps. She was wearing her winter coat, clutching her purse. She had not come inside. She couldn't bear to watch. She saw my face and she knew. He lost, she asked. He admitted it. I said. Diane nodded. She didn't look surprised. She looked resigned. I walked down the steps and stood in front of her. Mom, I said, when he provides the bank records, we are going to see everything. The mortgage, the loans, the Pierce debt. It is all going to come out. I know, she said. How long have you known? I asked. Diane looked at the courthouse doors. I signed a paper, she said softly, 10 years ago. After the first time he got in trouble, he brought home a document. He said it was an asset management agreement. He said it would protect the house if the business got sued. He said it gave him legal authority to move assets between our names without my signature. She looked at me, her eyes hollow. I signed it. Audrey, I signed it because I didn't want to fight. I signed it because I wanted to believe he was handling it. I felt a chill that had nothing to do with the weather. He did it to you too. I said, he trapped us both. Diane said, with signed papers, he made us sign away our voices so he could feel like a king. She reached out and took my hand. But you fought back, she said. Evelyn would have been proud. We stood there for a long time, watching the traffic move on the street. The sky was a flat, relentless gray. But there was a break in the clouds to the west, a thin line of pale light. I didn't have my $12,300. I probably never would. The money was gone, swallowed by the black hole of my father's debts. But I had something else. I had the truth. I had the knowledge that I was capable of standing in a room and demanding what was mine. I had broken the cycle. I squeezed my mother's hand. Come on. Mom, I said, let us go get some coffee. Not at St. Eliza's, somewhere new. We walked toward my car, leaving the courthouse behind us. The door to my old life, the life of the dutiful, oblivious daughter, was closed. I had locked it myself, and though the new door opened onto a messy, uncertain future, at least I was holding the key. Thank you so much for listening to this story. It was a journey through betrayal, family secrets, and the hard fight for the truth, and I hope it resonated with you. I would love to hear your thoughts in the comments. Have you ever had to draw a hard line with a family member over money? Or have you ever discovered a secret that changed how you saw the people you love? Please share your stories and let me know where you are listening from. I read every comment, and I love seeing our community grow from all over the world. If you enjoyed this story, please consider subscribing to Revenge Stories. We have many more tales of justice, karma, and turning the tables coming your way. Thank you for your support, and until next time, stay strong and keep your receipts.